Thanks for joining my session regarding Drupal and OpenAI for content editors. My name is Vincenzo Gambino. I'm from London, UK. I've been working with Drupal for 14 years now. I've been a speaker at several Drupal events around Europe and the US. And I'm also the co-author of the book Jumpstart Jamstack Development, where I explained how to build a web application using Gatsby and Sanity. And also there is an integration between Alexa and Sanity, and of course, an integration between Gatsby and Drupal. So 18 months has been passed since the release of ChatGPT in November 2022. At that point, the AI was available to everyone. There was an interface, people start using it, they start experimenting it, they start asking questions, generating content, and using it. So did the companies. Companies saw the potential. They start investing on the AI. They start building products. They start building applications to generate content, to do data analysis, to generate slides. This brought up some privacy concern. So what those companies are doing with the data that we input. So if I want to generate, for example, a data analysis on my sales and I use the AI, what the company that is managing the AI doing with my data? Are they going to retrain the AI with my data so it will be available to someone else? So for this reason, Italy and some other countries blocked the ChatGPT for a while until all the questions regarding the privacy and the data retention were answered. And then the EU came out with the AI Act to control and manage the AI and the data retention and privacy. After that, we had some fears and confirmation. So was the AI coming from our jobs? Are they going to be replaced by AI? From now, the answer is no, because the AI to replace a human being must work without supervision. And for the moment, the way we use it, we generate something. We then check that everything is correct, because the AI can still do mistakes that are called hallucination. Then if everything is fine, we use the content or whatever we have generated. So for example, in my case, it boosts up my job in programming, because I can generate a simple script or a little bit more complex script much easier. For example, I was going to compare two arrays of objects in JavaScript, and I had to compare some nested array with some other nested object. So I just gave the example of those objects and arrays to ChatGPT. I asked what I need to compare, and it came back with a function. I could do that, of course, in 10-15 minutes. I had to change a few functions in JavaScript, but through GPT, I've done it in 1 or 2 minutes. This saved me at least 10-15 minutes of work that I could concentrate on more complex part of the application. So the AI at this moment is assisting us, is boosting our jobs, our productivity, and so on. So today we're going to talk about what is OpenAI, what is ChatGPT and API. I'm going to go through just the terminologies, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. Then I'm going to talk about 2 of the modules I picked for this presentation that are available for Drupal. One is ChatGPT Content Assistance, and the other one is OpenAI ChatGPT Search Integration. Then we're going to see how we can extend those functionalities. Then, because those content are used to create, those modules are used to create content, we can see what we can do with the content that's been created, how we can use the AI to analyze and do other stuff with our content. Then we're going to see the demo, and then at the end, the Q&A. So OpenAI, as we know, is a research laboratory that develops and maintains a safe artificial intelligence, and they use the modules to generate text, images, video, and audio. Those models are DALL-E, which is a model that can generate and edit images, Whisper or TTS, which is text-to-speech, which is a model that can convert audio into text in the case of Whispers, or TTS does the opposite, converts text into audio, which is text-to-speech. Then the embeddings is a set of models that can convert text into numerical forms. Basically is a numeric representation of the semantic meaning of the text. Then we have the moderation. It's a module that can detect if a text may be sensitive or safe. And then we have GPT, which is the model that we all know, which is a set of modules that can understand and generate natural language. We're going to go through GPT and the embeddings later. The embeddings later in GPT now, sorry. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformed. It is designed to generate human-like text in a conversational settings. And we use it for chatbot or virtual assistants, for example. We can generate content and translating it. We can generate interactive gaming experience with dynamic storytelling, and we can generate personalized recommendation based on the user preferences. How we can interact with GPT? As we know, we can interact through the OpenAI chat, or we can use the API, in which we're going to go through in this presentation. So the OpenAI, basically, the API key concept are the prompts, which are essentially how you program the module. So it's the command that you pass through to the AI. So basically, when you ask, for example, tell me the history of Drupal, or you ask any question regarding I'm a Drupal programmer, I want to create a model, give me the blueprint of the module, and that is a prompt. Tokens are a unit of text that the language model read and processes, because the AI does not understand text, but it understands number. So as the appendix that are a representation of the semantic meaning of the text, token is just the representation of the word itself. It could be phrases or something else. And then the models that we saw before are the advanced artificial intelligence systems. The prerequisite are the OpenAI account, the OpenAI key, and the OpenAI method. So this is some of the example, the endpoint example. So we have the completion, which is to generate and retrieve text. Then we have the embeddings, which is, as I say, the numeric representation of the semantic meaning of the word. Then we have, again, the endpoints for the image generation, and then the example endpoints for the text-to-speech. To do a request to the OpenAI API, we need the model ID, we need the prompts, so the text, the max token, and then the temperature. The temperature is the level or of how predictable will be the answer from the LLM, from the AI. So, for example, if the temperature is 0 and I ask the sky is, the AI will reply most likely the sky is blue. But if I put a high temperature, like for example of 1.8 or 2, and I ask the sky is, most likely will come back with some unpredictable answer. For example, the sky is similar to this remote control, for example, that we can play later with the modules that we're going to install into Drupal. This is an example call. So we need to pass the bearer token, so the OpenAI key. We're going to see how we can generate it later. Then we need to pass the model, the prompt, the max token that we want between the answer and the, sorry, this is the max token for the prompt, and then the temperature. And this is the example response. So we have again the ID, the object, the date, and the model, and then inside the choices array we have the text, which is the answer from the API, and then we have some data about the usage. So how many prompts has the token, how many tokens has the completions, the answer, and then the total tokens. Some of the module has limitation of the maximum token that you can use between the question and the prompt and the answer. So sometimes it's 2,000 tokens, sometimes 4,000, depending on the model that you're using. We're going to explore the tokens later in the slides. Now that we have some key concept of the OpenAI API and the terminologies, we can go through the Drupal and the OpenAI modules that are available at the moment. The first one is the OpenAI ChatGPT integration. So this is a suite of modules that provide the API foundation for the integration between Drupal and OpenAI. So we can generate content, images, and you can do content analysis and more. So in the modules that are going to see, the sub-modules that are going to see today are the OpenAI CK editor integration. So we can see how we can integrate OpenAI in our CK editor. Then we're going to see the content editing tools. So what we can do with the content that we already have. Then we have the ChatGPT Explorer, where we can just try out a few prompts, a few configuration on our side with GPT. And then we have the OpenAI the module where we're going to generate images. So we install it as usual. We use Composer and then Drush. And now we can add our API key. So we go to OpenAI account. We click on the button, click create new secret. We're going to create a new secret key. Once it's created, we can copy. Then we need also the organization ID, which I must because is unique. And then we can now paste those two information in our Drupal application, in our configuration form of the Drupal OpenAI module. So here we have the settings. So we have the OpenAI key and the organization ID. Now that we can connect our Drupal application to OpenAI, we can go and we can install the CK editor module. So we install these modules. We're going to provide a button on the CK editor where you can generate content. We can summarize it. We can translate, change the tone, adjust also the HTML of the page of the content if we need to. So to configure it, we need to go through through any of our text format. In this case, I'm editing the basic HTML text format. I have the button here available, and I add it to the active toolbar. Then I will add some more configuration, always within the basic HTML text format, and I enable it. I define the default module, the temperature, and then the max token between the prompt and the response. Now that I have the button configured, I can use it. This is my example of my body of the node form. So I can click, for example, on text completion. I can ask, tell me the history of Drupal, and automatically will fill the body of my content of the body of the node. So now I have the text there. I can change the tone. In this case, for example, I can ask him to tell me like I'm 5 years old, and it will regenerate the text. Then I can summarize it. This does not show any prompt. So we just select part of the whole body and we can click on summarize, and then this will generate summarized version of the content. And also we can translate it. In this case, with this module, the language do not depend on the language that are installed into Drupal. You can add any language here, we'll translate it. So even if Dutch is not installed in Drupal, it is not installed in Drupal, you can translate the content, just the body, in Dutch. Then we can try the content tools submodules. Basically provides on the right-hand side of the node form a few tools. For example, again, we can analyze the text for moderation. So we can see if it provides any like swear words or any copyright issue. Then we can again adjust the content. We can summarize the text. We can suggest the content title, and we can suggest the taxonomy. Those buttons here do not do any modification, any edit, do not edit the body of the content. They just will print the answer directly, the response directly in the right-hand side of the content form. For example, as we're gonna show now with the suggest taxonomy. So here I can choose the field. For example, in this case is the body. Then I can click on suggest taxonomy, and it will come back with some keyword. At the moment, those keywords are not related to any of my taxonomy terms. It's not related to any vocabulary, but we can extend the functionality of this module. And we can, for example, pass a list of terms, and we can ask the OpenAI to get the more relevant keywords to this content. So it will come back with our own terms. How we can extend it. So this module uses the OpenAI PHP client package, which is maintained, which is good because it's on packages. And then we can use the client method, then the completion, and then we can use create. We need to pass the model, and then the prompt. And it will come back the response in an array, and inside choices, and then the first item inside text will have the answer of the response, which is the same that we saw with the car request. And this is what the module is doing in the OpenAI CK editor inside the controller completion, the completion controller. So we have the response here. So we calling the client method, then completion, create, and then we pass the module that we define in our configuration, then the prompt that we are passing from the text, then the temperature again from our configuration, and the max token again from the configuration, the CK editor. Then we convert the response into an array. And then again, inside choice, in the first item inside text, we have the response. The other module is the ChatGPT Content Assistant module. This is a lightweight example for a ChatGPT. It can create content, translate content, and create images. It's lightweight because during the demo, we're going to see the configuration that we can add and what it provides. So when we enable it, again, we require it with Composer, and then we install it with Rush. And we need to add the settings, of course. We need to add our API keys. We need to define the modules and the endpoint, the max token, the temperature, and which content types it will be used. So in this case, it's not adding a button like the OpenAI CK editor module, but we have a link. Clicking on the link will open a pop-up where we can add our prompt. So we add, again, tell me the history of Drupal. We click on generate, and this will generate the content. Once we can check, you can click on use this content, and it will be pasted automatically in the body of the node form. The thing is that you don't have here like a chat where you can basically ask him to regenerate. In this case, you need to close it and then add another prompt and regenerate the content. Then this is the translation from the ChatGPT Content Assistant. So in this case, it uses the language from Drupal. So if a language is not installed, you cannot translate the content in that language. In this case, I installed Dutch, and I can click on translate using ChatGPT, and it will translate the text field that are included in my content. So we can extend it. This module does not use an external package, so we need to use the service class GPT API service, and then again we call the method get GPT response. We pass the text, and then we come back with the response. So now we saw how we can create content. We can translate it, we can generate content, we can retrieve keywords. But what we can do now with this content? We can use it. We can use the API to improve our search experience. We can train GPT with our own data. It's not fine-tuning. It will be done through the embeddings. With, again, what I said is the numerical representation of the semantic meaning of the text. And then we will use the RAG technique. RAG technique basically combines the strength of pre-trained language models like a GPT with information retrieval system, the query, the vector database, because our embedding will be stored into the vector database. And then this will be processed by the generator, again, by the GPT, to show in a human understandable language the response. So the embeddings, as I said, is a numerical representation of semantic meaning of the word. Those are vectors, and vectors like in coordinates. And we use the distance between two vectors to measure the relatedness. So the smaller the distance is, which means that the words, the sentence are related. The longer the distance is low relatedness. And we can use it for search, recommendation, and classification. But what these coordinates and points and number means? So it means this. So we have the word cat, for example, and we pass it to the embeddings, and the embeddings come back with these numbers. So the word cat has the coordinate 2 and 3. The dog has the coordinate 2 and 4. A car has the coordinate 7 and 1. As we can see, cat and dog are close to each other because both of them are animals. They have a tail, they are mammals, they have 4 legs, while a car hasn't got anything in common with dog and cat. So it's stored far away from those words, from cat and dog, from the animal side, basically. For the vector database for this demo, I use Pinecone, which provides, again, the API. And then I use the Search API AI and the Search API attachment to basically store my content in a vector database. And again, we use Composer to download it and then Rush to install it. And then we can start configure it. So first we start from Search API attachment. We need a PDF extractor, because in this demo I'm going to show how to store a PDF file into a vector database. So we can ask question to this PDF file. So I'm going to use PDF to text extractor. Then I need to do the embedding settings. So I'm going to use the model, and then I'm going to specify Pinecone, and inside Pinecone tab, I'm going to add my API key and my product ID. After that, in my Search API index, I can basically add my field attachment, which is here, and I can define the type of embeddings. And in my content, I can also, again, add the attachment and then the body. So in this way, the attachment, the file itself, and then also the attachment, so the node and the body will be stored in a vector database. So GPT will understand the meaning of my content. It will give a coordinates, numerical representation of the meaning. And then the user can then review, can ask questions about this content. How we can ask questions? We can ask it through the Search API AI chat form. So we have this block, which is provided by the Search API AI module. And once it's placed, we can use it. So for example, I have a file, I have the content with an attachment about the AI and healthcare. And when I ask some question, it will reply in a better way than the traditional search, because this is not a keyword-based search when it's based by keyword, but in this way is searching by meaning. So the meaning of the sentence of the question, and then it's replying like ChatGPT, basically, in a human way. Okay, are you ready for the demo? Not yet, because I want to clarify a few points. The first one is the token that we talk. So the token is as they say, is a piece of text that's been parsed out for further processing, and it can be words, phrases, symbols, or anything else. And then those tokens are converted into numbers, because again, the AI does not understand our language, it understands numbers. And how we can see those tokens? We can go to the OpenAI, for example, tokenizer. And here I put the James Joyce poems. And here we can see how it's processing into tokens. So we can see that we have one token here, another one here, here, here. All these are tokens. So there are 76 tokens that then process it and converts it into number. And to the LLM, it receives just these numbers. Now, as I said, there is a limitation on the number of tokens that you can send and receive in one request. Sometimes it's 2,000 tokens, sometimes 4,000, or in other modules 8,000 or 36,000. But we always have limitation. To avoid this limitation, we can do this. We can split the text into smaller chunks, and then we can send the request. In our case, for example, for the embeddings. So we have the text here, we split it, and we send 3 requests to OpenAI to generate embeddings or any question or anything that we want to ask. In this way, we are sure that we are not going to pass the limit of the tokens we can send on each request. To see a bigger picture, so this is what happens in our application. Got this one. So I have for example, PDF file or a content. I split into chunks, and then each chunks will be converted into an embeddings, and then will be stored into the vector database. Now, when a user comes and want to do a search in my application, that could be a search about content, could be an FAQ, could be a technical support, can be anything. So I can ask my question through my Drupal form. The question will go through the embedding process again, because the LLM must understand the meaning of that question. It will do the vector search. It will come back, the vector database will come back with the coordinates and the results. The LLM will start processing the response. It will start understands what this number means. It will generate an answer that will be a human readable answer. Okay, now it's finally demo time. Will be a live demo, so let's see what's happening, what happens. Right, I see there are already 5 questions. Okay. All right, let's go. So this is my application in my local. So I've added a few nodes here regarding the Stanford session. Plus I have this content here, which also contain a PDF file. So for example, this. And now I can ask through my form, I can ask question about this PDF file. For example, I can ask about the Uruguay AI strategy. For example, let's see. For example, I'm going to send a request. Now it's processing it because the module is still in alpha. It's not showing any spinning wheel or something, but at the moment it's performing the search here. Yeah, so now we have here the response. We have the published here, everything that is related to the content here. Then, for example, we can go back to the home page, for example. And here I can, for example, ask something about the Stanford webcam. Of course, as you can understand, this will have a huge impact on the way the user can interact with any application. So now we can have a ChatGPT-like search on our own application. So we don't need to fine-tune any model, any custom LLM, but we can use OpenAI and a vector database to basically train the AI with our own data. And here is the response. Talking about the Stanford AI camp. And then, of course, any information that comes within this form is always related to my application. For example, let's see, this one question about this. About the presenter. Okay, let's see. What's the title? So we are more precise. Let's see. Let's see what they reply. They should reply something about this. Let's see. The presentation should I choose Cyprus Playwrights delivered by Andrea Angentaloni. So it's fine. This is founder of this. Okay, so it's coming back with the answer and the link again to the content. Now let's go through the creation of the content. So let's start with for example, Stanford Web University. So now I have here the OpenAI button. I can select, click on text completion, and I can ask, tell me the history of Stanford University. Okay, so this now is not using my data anymore. Of course, now it's connecting to OpenAI to get information. And now it start writing it. Start writing the content. Here we can see the status. It's using the response. So the response is done. So now, for example, I can use the other part, which is the content editing tools. So I can analyze the text. For example, I can click on analyze. It does not relate anything. I can change it on. I can summarize. For example, here, I can click on summarize. It's a little bit longer a summary, but that's fine. I can suggest the content title, for example. And then also I can suggest taxonomies. We got here. So again, this is not related to any Drupal, any terms that I have in my Drupal application. If I want to, I had to pass the array with all the terms that I have. Then, for example, we can select it here. We can translate it. Okay, and now it's translating it. And all this comes from the OpenAI module that we have in Drupal, the first one that I talked about. Then here I can use the other module. So let me delete this one. And here. So now this is not going to paste it directly into the body as the previous did. So we're going to receive an answer here. Hopefully it will work because sometimes it's on and off. Bit of waiting time. This case timeout. Like this module does this, so it is the funny things of the and then yeah, so it's all translated, creation, analyzing. So now we can go through some of the configuration. So here we have the OpenAI settings with my API key and the rest. And here we have the search API attachment, where I defined the method to extract the attachment, in this case, the PDF. And then we have the search API here, the embedding settings, sorry. So here I define which content I'm going to store, I'm going to use, and the Pinecone, so Pinecone vector database. Then in the search API, I have here my index, so my server, which is Pinecone. And here comes automatically from the embeddings. And in my index, I have the content and the files. In the field, I have the attachment as embeddings. And again, the attachment again as embeddings and the body as embeddings. And for processors, I added the files attachment. And here I'm saying which extensions and so on. Then we can check, for example, we can play with the ChatGPT Explorer. Right here, we can test. So the temperature, the profile and everything. So the profile means that this will be always attached to the prompt. So it gives some context on me. So this can be used, for example, for application where you can just specify the context of the application to ChatGPT on each request. And then we can, for example, in this case, I'm at Drupal, inside the Drupal website. So if I ask, for example, how to create a controller, and I submit, the response will be Drupal related, right? Now, for example, let me refresh. If I, for example, if I say, I am a Laravel developer, and I ask how to create a controller. Submit. Now the context will be that I'm a Laravel developer, and it's giving me the Laravel direction now. Let's try something else. So it's fine. What code? So we put temperature 0. Let's see the answer. Okay, so it's normal answer. So now let me refresh. I just do it for caching thing. So I now put 2, and let's see. I shall come back with something. Okay. Yeah, so more unpredictable. Then we can test the last thing, which is the funniest. So we can do, for example, this one. The lead 3 is fine. Leave it. And we can ask, for example, for Terminator coding in Drupal. Let's see what happens. Isolating the image, and we'll provide a link. We can also have the basics for if we need. For example, if we need to create a file, we can use the base64 in that case. Okay, we can see. You ready? Okay, so here is Terminator coding Drupal. Then we can do something else. Not sure if you want to write something in the chat. I want to some image to generate. We have another minute. So for example, studying in Stanford. Again. Let's see. Okay, so now this Terminator studying in Stanford Uni. Of course, OpenAI cannot use Terminator itself because of the copyright, so it's just making up some robot there. Okay, so demo time is done, and now is we do a recap. So we saw the current status of the OpenAI modules in Drupal. We saw how we can connect the API and next to the API, and then how we can extend the current functionality. We can see how we can use those modules within Drupal. And we also saw how we can train the LLM with our own data using the RAG technique. So that means that we can create an FAQ, a dynamic FAQ, a dynamic selling, product selling for example, in e-commerce, or any like technical support or any other type of support. And now it's time for Q&A. Thanks.
Thanks for that presentation.
Welcome.
I'm curious, are you working on this yourself?
I'm doing some work on these modules, yes. Yeah. And we used it where I work for moderation of content. So when someone adds some content, we check some copyright, some policy that we have, plus for swear words and other things. And now we're implementing it for other client for storing the content into a vector database.
I think Mark had a question. Where'd he go?
Yeah.
He disappeared. I think I missed it at the beginning. What's the status of these modules?
And those modules can be used for production. And of course, some of them may be reviewed. For example, the Search API AI gives you like the base on how you can implement it with Search API. But of course, I had to do some modifications, some patch to make it work for the moment. But to give you an example, then you can create your own module and your implementation. And the CK editor one is fine to be used. And everything from the OpenAI module is can be used. So for example, if I go here.
So you're using it right now in production?
Yes, this can be used, yes.
And what kind of feedback are you getting with it from other people?
No, I quite liked it. It's fine. No complaint at the moment. Any question? Yeah, Andreas. Yeah, so many possibilities. I know. There are many things that can be done. The most feedback, the use case that everyone is interested on is always the search. So because of course, again, you can train your e-commerce with your product. So a user can search products within your e-commerce through the AI, through a ChatGPT like search, and it makes it like more dynamic and better than the traditional keyword search.
Oh, like a chat bot on your Drupal site. Has anyone used it for that? Like, you know, if people want help with certain things, courses, whatever.
Pardon?
I said, has anyone used it as a chat bot?
The Drupal module?
Like, you know, on some websites, they have like the little ask a question at the bottom. Is that what one of the use cases?
For the Drupal itself, no, not I'm aware of at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But again, this provides just the connection to OpenAI to the vector database, so it can be extended really easily.
Are you not using Search API like regular search? This is kind of hooked into it. Wasn't quite sure how the search integration worked.
Yeah, so Search API provides the way to store your content in different ways. So you can store, for example, with Search API in Solr, or you can use the database search. In this case, I'm using a vector database. Search API is just a base to give you access to a dynamic search.
Oh, okay. And the vector database was Pinecone?
Yes. Yeah, Pinecone, yes.
Oh, okay. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah. So instead of using Solr or the database, or the Drupal database, I use the vector database Pinecone. Is there any other question? Anything else you want to review?
Oh, I'll also just say thanks for sharing this. I haven't seen anyone using this with Drupal before, and it's really, really impressive.
Thanks. Thank you. So I shared something now, which basically is the in October, we'll host the first Drupal AI camp. The Drupal Artificial Intelligence camp will be on the 24th of October this year, and will be done in London. If anyone is around London at the time, you can join us.
Thanks. Great presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah, I tried messing with the ChatGPT module, and you clarified some things that I think I was kind of confused on, with definitely the CK editor one. And was looking at trying to see how you could implement it with search too. So I think that covered a lot of it. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? Anybody? You can put it in the chat too. I can say it out loud if anybody wants. And thank you so much.
Thanks.